Yeah, I think it might be interesting if we start talking about psychedelics because, especially with everything that's going on now, I think it's very interesting to see when people's minds become opened and when they can, like, when they question things that they didn't question before. And yeah, I think psychedelics have a role to play in that. And yeah, I just wanted to hear what you thought about different types of psychedelics. I have some interesting stats I want to share with you in a minute, but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, definitely. I mean, there is just complete scientific proof that psychedelics open your mind, and you really can't experience that until you do the psychedelic. And there's always the memes about people thinking they're enlightened under psychedelic when they're on psychedelic. Sorry, but I really feel like there is this sort of hidden knowledge, if you want to call it that, some sort of wisdom that these psychedelics are giving you that can't be transferred through language. It can't be transferred through anything else but the experience itself. And I feel like it then plays a massive part in the development of culture and humans. Like I don't know if you've ever seen. Have you seen Fantastic Fungi on Netflix?
I think I saw part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting documentary about mycelium. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's essentially, yes, that exactly. It's essentially nature's brain underneath all of us, and it's all connected. Like all the plants and roots are connected through it, and it's how mushrooms grow, and it's essentially the universe's brain for organisms. And we then eat these and have psychedelic experiences, and it's almost nature's way of telling us how to improve and how to develop as a race and as an individual.
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought the same thing, and it reminds me of the stoned ape theory. I don't know too much about this theory, but I heard that it's like the idea that throughout history, our ancestors would have found psychedelic compounds like, mushrooms or different psychedelic herbs and plants. They probably took them. I think there's a lot of evidence to say that they did. And then the idea is that inspired them to make breakthroughs, technological advancements, and be creative in ways that they would have not been otherwise. Like unlocked certain parts of their brain.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think a real person who brought this theory forward was Terence McKenna. I'm sure you've heard a lot about him. And the question with the stone ape theory is there's a mystery within biology and evolution where humans, in the space of 2 million years, have this vast brain development, and it goes really rapid. And there's a lot of theories for it. Some people say the invention of fire, figuring out fire, and it added nutrients to the food, and that develops the brain. Other people say it's the psychedelic mushrooms that they started taking. But for me personally, I believe it is just a multiplicity of all these factors coming together that then allowed us to develop the brain. And when you take something like psilocybin, it does seem really logical that things like language can come out of it, because it is almost, there's elements of telepathy involved, and that sounds really bizarre if you've not ever experienced it, but this is really real stuff in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's super interesting. I've heard many different ideas about that kind of that gap in our history where we supposedly evolved a lot faster than we should have done if we were going by the evolution model where things happen in this linear way, adaptations to the environment. I think there's, like you say, there's this gap, pretty large gap, in which we basically skyrocketed our evolution and our growth as a species, and nobody really knows why. I mean, there's different ideas about psychedelics being that catalyst. There's also ideas I've heard about ancient aliens splicing our DNA, literally altering our DNA with different types of DNA, and we can go into that rabbit hole as well. But I think it's really interesting. It's definitely clear that something happened to set us on a different trajectory, to separate us from, let's say, apes or whatever we were before, like early human, for some kind of purpose. Like there must be some kind of reason why that happened.
So do you believe then it was an intentional thing? Because I've heard other things about how maybe it could have been like a freak accident of biology that we evolved that quickly, or do you believe, like you said with the aliens, there was actually an intentional thing behind it that made us change so quickly?
Personally, I think it was intentional, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So I've read various different books and research material that go back to really early stories, before that most of the religions came around. This was really early stories and myths and things like that. And what you find is that they actually have quite a lot in common. So, for example, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, the book of Enki, right? It's this account of ancient aliens and how they influenced and kind of guided us in a certain way. It talks about the gene splicing and all of this stuff. If you then compare that to a lot of religious texts, like for example, in the Christian Bible, they talk about in the Garden of Eden, in the creation story, they talk about, for example, like taking the rib of Adam and then turning that into Eve, the first female, right? That sounds a lot more like genetic splicing if you kind of take a step back a bit and think, okay, maybe it's not the physical rib, maybe they're talking about the genes, taking the genes or the genetic material from Adam. And the word Adam actually meant man. I think it meant the early man or human. It wasn't a name. It was actually a description of a species, man, human. And so when you look at it from that context, the Book of Enki and various other ones, they tell a very different story. And it looks, to me at least, more likely that some kind of alien race came and interfered with our DNA and set us on a different trajectory. But I mean, of course, I'll never know for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's interesting to kind of hypothesize about these things, but
no, 100%. I mean, there's a really interesting link in all those things that you said, between religion, psychedelics, like it is all connected in a way like that. And especially when you look at the spiritual aspects, they're all found in religion. They've just been twisted in a slight different way, like, so for example, you've heard the story, the famous one with Moses and the burning bush. He speaks to God through this burning bush, but Jewish scholars have talked about how this is the acacia tree, which is filled with DMT, and him speaking to God is him meeting the godlike entities and DMT, and him coming down and telling him what he's learned to his people. It's all metaphors for psychedelic experiences. And even things like manifestation, manifestation now, prayer is an old manifestation, and they're sort of getting it right, but it's been twisted, for people who want power and it's got a religious context. But when you take that religious context out of prayer, it is literally just manifestation.
Yeah, exactly. There was just a few things I wanted to mention. So going back to the psychedelics, I have some interesting facts which you probably already know, but maybe just for anyone listening this might be quite interesting. So what I find strange is that society or governments in many countries have made most psychedelics illegal. They're actually like one of the most controlled substances, with the strictest penalties, things like magic mushrooms, ecstasy, that kind of stuff. They're very strictly controlled by many countries. But if you actually look at the statistics, like for example, the amount of yearly deaths attributed to these different things worldwide on average, you have, let's say if you take 100,000 consumers, 10 to 100 of them, according to this study, will die from alcohol. 800 to 1,200 will die from tobacco or smoking. And these things are both legal and actually encouraged in society and media. And yet they cause by far the most deaths compared to, for example, cannabis, which in that example was responsible for 0 to 1 deaths out of 100,000. Practically nothing. Like it's almost impossible to have a lethal dose of THC and cannabis. And things like ecstasy is a little bit more risky because it depends, that's 1 to 10. Still nowhere near alcohol or tobacco. And then psilocybin, psilocybin is responsible, according to this study, for 0 to 1, like almost no deaths whatsoever per 100,000 consumers, compared to, again, alcohol, which is 100, and tobacco, which is 1,000. So it's like the danger and the perceived danger of psychedelics is so vastly different to the actual reality of what's dangerous. I mean, like alcohol and tobacco, for example, they're responsible for an insane amount of deaths per year. Like, for example, smoking causes 7 million deaths a year. Alcohol, it says 2.8 million. And what I found almost the most shocking of all, medical error. So like qualified doctors and professionals making a mistake is responsible for 2.6 million deaths a year. 2.6 million and 138 million injuries. And then when you compare that with like When's the last time you heard of someone dying of a psychedelic? I've never heard of it.
Well,
Like,
that's the thing as well. Like with psychedelics, just from the substance itself, you actually can't die. It's the secondary factors. So say you get scared, you go crazy, like you jump off a building. Like that's the thing that kills you. It's never actually the substance itself. Whereas if you take too much alcohol, like it will poison you. You're going to die. Too much tobacco, like you will literally die from it. Like, but it is if you're in a complete safe environment with these substances, you know how to use them. You've had the education. Like it's going to go well, and it'll be a beneficial experience for you.
yeah, exactly. And I think we should mention that as well. Is like with mental health, obviously there is a factor of, if you have issues and mental conditions before you take a psychedelic, obviously that's probably not a good idea. You need to, there's like, a process and a framework and everything for doing it. But it's interesting to look at the data on, the actual danger of this stuff.
100%. Having said that as well, that doesn't necessarily mean there's a good drug. Like, I feel like you can't ever put morals on a drug. It's how you use the drug that makes it good or bad. And
Yeah.
like I said, when you've got that education, you're in the right places. It really can be used for good. And water. We all need water, but too much of water can drown you. Like, it is all about balance.
Yeah, exactly. Using it for the right purpose and yeah, with the right kind of, especially with psychedelics, the right kind of environment and ceremony and the intention of why you're actually taking it. It's not just to, go to a rave or something. For most people, it's like, ideally, in my opinion, should be used for something higher than that, something more important or profound.
What I found with my own personal use of psychedelics is when you do it in a recreational setting, even though it can be fun, you do miss an aspect because you are socializing. It still grounds you in reality, so you don't get the full picture of it. Whereas if you've ever heard of like Terence McKenna's like ultimate trip, where it's 5 grams in silent darkness just by yourself, it literally takes you to that other spiritual side straight away, and you're not grounded in reality, so you can have that full experience and really like take what it can give you.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we should talk a little bit about astrology.
Sure thing. What I am actually curious about your opinions is because I've mixed feelings about it. I've heard a lot of different things. I'm quite skeptical in nature and like to look at spirituality from a very scientific side, and especially with like the commercialization of like tarot cards and things like that. I do have that skeptical hat on for a lot of it. So I'm curious to see what your opinions are.
Yeah, so I'm kind of similar. So I like to take a combination of spiritual thinking and then also logical, critical, data-based, reality thinking, and see what they have in common. So, but astrology is an interesting one because in a way there's no kind of standardized test for it. You can't simulate it in a lab and get results in the same way that you could about, for example, a supplement or, an exercise regime. Like it requires a little bit of subjective thinking and opinion, in my opinion. But that being said, I think the concepts behind it kind of make sense. So if you consider, for example, the moon and its magnetic effect on the vast amount of water on Earth, supposedly it influences, it either completely controls or it influences a little bit the tides of the oceans on Earth, which is a huge thing. Like that's no trivial thing. To manipulate and be able to move that amount of water requires a huge amount of energy, which is being transferred either magnetically or otherwise from the moon to the Earth. So it's very obvious that planets, obviously, right, in the solar system, planets have an effect on each other and on the things on the planet. For example, like gravity, magnetic influences, and electromagnetic influences, and with regards to things like the solar radiation, sunspot activity, that kind of stuff. So the foundation is kind of already there, in my opinion, from a scientific point of view. We know that, magnetic, electromagnetic radiation and light have a huge impact on things, just to reduce it to its most basic elements. So then when you then also consider that we are electromagnetic beings, we transmit and receive electrical signals, and we're made of something like 90% water, which is a conductor of electricity and responds to the moon and various different astrological influences. That's why, for me, it kind of makes sense that there's something going on. There must be some kind of effect based on astrological movements and I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like it makes a lot of sense to me based on knowing those things. And then from a spiritual perspective, I think, in my opinion, it's more like a default kind of programming that a person has, that if you don't become aware of it or change it, that will become like your kind of default pattern of behavior. And many spiritual traditions have this, and they call it the archetypal system, or prenatal patterns, ancestral roots, and ancestral destiny. They all kind of mean similar things. So to say, like, a person when they're born has this kind of path that they will naturally go through, whether it's type of personality, the type of person they'll be, the things they'll do, what their triggers will be, their wounds, or these different things. I think many of them are predestined to an extent, but I think it's more like a default thing where you can change it. But if you're not aware of it, and if you do nothing and just kind of let life push you around where it wants to push you around, that's not destiny, but that's the most likely path that you will go down. And yeah, so, and I think if you read a lot of astrological kind of predictions and summaries, I don't know if you've ever done like an astrology chart or a natal chart or anything like that.
I've done like TikTok equivalents, never like actual like been to someone kind of thing. It's interesting what you say, especially because I've seen a lot of astrology like with ancient civilizations, we call it, like in the past, like very popular in the past, and I feel like even a lot of religion was inspired from it as well. But yeah, it is really interesting about what you say about the moon. I never really thought about it like that, because obviously there is so much going on with our bodies in the universe that we can't even visualize or comprehend, that there seems to be almost this underlying like mechanism behind it, like, progressing us along, because there's a direction of evolution. There seems to be almost a purpose and a direction that we're heading in.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem like there's a grand design behind things. And another thing I found very interesting, which I don't want to say it proves that astrology is real, because again, I don't really have a strong opinion about that. I just kind of think there's something going on, and I'm curious to find out what. But if you look at the ancient structures, like, for example, the pyramids, we talked about this before, the pyramids, the different mega structures around the world, the people that built them obviously were far more advanced than we give them credit for. Like, for example, the pyramids, they can't even build those today. But the measurements between the different pieces of the pyramid and the different buildings, the alignments with certain constellations, they knew things that we are only just discovering now about astrological cycles, orbits, precession of the equinoxes, and all of this astrological stuff that's really complex, that we barely know it now, and we're just now discovering with our modern science the things that they knew thousands and thousands of years ago and built into their buildings, literally. So that makes me think, let's not, as a society, let's not get too confident that we can rule things like that out, because if they were right about that thousands of years ago, and we also then know that these civilizations put huge emphasis on astrology and numerology and symbolism and all of these different things that we dismiss now, some of us dismiss as kind of crazy, maybe new agey, might be true, might not be true. So that's the perspective I would take, is that if ancient civilizations that were far more advanced than, some of them even more advanced than we are now in certain regards, if they placed that much importance on it and they built it into their buildings and structures and calendars and everything, there must be something there. There must be something behind it. So
100%. I mean, your evidence of the pyramids, it seems so impossible that they could have been built by some past civilization. It almost seems that there must be something. But the issue is, yeah, we don't know what something is, do we? Like, could be aliens. It could be an advanced evolution of humans. It could be, even like some aliens playing a prank on us, and it's not actually the truth. Like, just because we don't know for 100% sure. But yeah, honestly, like, because they've got the pyramids at the, I believe the coordinates is the exact speed of light. It's like a few decimal places, which is utterly crazy to have it that exact. So it does seem impossible to what that could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to go on too much about the pyramids, because maybe our maybe people will get bored, but it's, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating buildings on Earth, if not the most fascinating. I don't know if you've read a book called The Great Pyramid Decoded. Have you read that book?
I have not, no.
That's fine. Not many people have. It's actually it's very complicated. I don't understand all of it, but the bits I do understand. Basically, what this guy did, he spent his whole life researching the measurements of the Great Pyramid. So he measured everything, like the distance between the different chambers, what material they were made of, the angles that they were, built at, what they were pointing towards, everything. And he came up with this code that analyzed these different measurements and interpreted it and kind of turned it into a language. And what he found is that within the Great Pyramid measurements, there is a whole language that describes unimaginable different things. Like it predicts different things that have happened in history. It predicts things that haven't even happened yet. It accurately shows and annotates different things about the world and how things we're just discovering now about modern science. That, to me, could not have been built by a human, or at least not a human on his own. That shows to me some kind of divine influence.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. Do you know how he's able to transfer like these angles and data was found into like how it predicts like past civilizations?
So there's a whole chapter actually. I can't recite it off the top of my head because it's this guy's life's work, and he's incredibly intelligent with this. But the first chapter of the book, for anyone who wants to go and read The Great Pyramid Decoded, he explains before he starts. He tells like, here is how I came to these conclusions about this measurement means this one means this, and so on.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out. That's The Great Pyramid's Decoded.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But yeah, in terms of, because I know there's people listening who might think astrology, for example, is nonsense. Completely understand. I understand that. I don't have like I said, a strong opinion about it. So what I personally do is I have a folder on my computer where I've done most of the tests you can imagine online. So like I've done astrology tests, numerology readings, tests, birth charts, moon readings, all of the different things you can imagine in the spiritual world. And I've just kind of put them all into a folder to see, do they have any similarities? Like, what is there in common with a numerology reading versus an astrology reading versus a tarot reading? Just to see, are there any similarities? And in many cases there are, but any one specific reading I found isn't super accurate, or it will have things that are not, they don't quite match. So I think, in my opinion, the best way of going about it is to take as many perspectives as you can, and then just take a step back and think, is there a pattern here, basically?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what I like with astrology is because unlike religion, where people get meaning from it and it can help them, astrology doesn't come with that dogmatic package of like fundamentalism that you have to follow. So I feel like if you believe in astrology like the absolute T, but it helps you, like, absolute no issue with that, even if it is a potential pseudoscience. Like, if it helps you, applies meaning into your life, like, that's an amazing thing, and a much better alternative to something that religion says it offers, like gives you the meaning but traps you into that mindset. And I see like tarot card readings and stuff, and sometimes it can feel like really personal and like it's just hit the spot with its prediction. And if you go in with that mindset, like, it can really then help you like with the things that you're struggling with, I feel like. So I feel like it is definitely a better alternative to religion, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are downsides with organized religion and dogmatic thinking. Whenever you have an ideology that imposes itself on others and says you have to think this way and there's no alternative, there's no possibility of anything else being correct, that, in my opinion, is quite dangerous. I mean, that's where you get various forms of extremism and religious wars, holy wars. I mean, this has happened throughout history. So yeah, absolutely. I think the best way is to just take a step back a bit, be open-minded. Even if you feel like something is true, just be a bit open-minded. It might not be that way. It might be slightly different, or the truth might be somewhere in the middle, combination of different beliefs and systems and ideas.
100%. I mean, I think that's what psychedelics have taught me as well. Like, when I first went to having that psychedelic experience, my whole world was completely destroyed. Everything that I thought was true was just completely blown up, and because I feel like it's a metaphor for, a lot of people have especially in the science community, to be fair, like a materialistic paradigm where they believe everything is material. But I feel like as soon as you enter that psychedelic experience, the whole spiritual realm, the idealistic kind of realm is opened up to you, and you realize that everything is not all necessarily matter, and that it's mutable and quantum based, and that you can literally change your reality.
Yeah.
Just had my phone run out of filming space, but no worries, I'll keep doing it on the laptop. Would you like to dive into your DMT experience? Have you done DMT, or was that you just talking about DMT in general on your TikTok?
Oh no, I've heard a lot of interviews where they talk about it. I haven't actually done it yet. You know, I haven't had the opportunity, but I find it very interesting. It's a very interesting compound, and I think the effect it has on the brain and consciousness is profound. So yeah, one day soon maybe I will experiment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, might not be able to include this bit in the podcast, but if you were interested in doing it, you can actually find the recipes on like Reddit, and you can buy all the ingredients legally and like then extract it yourself. Or like, because all the ingredients you need for it are legal to buy in the UK, and you can just make it yourself through like a Reddit form.
Nice.
And it'd be a much cheaper alternative. But yeah, DMT fascinates me. I don't know if you heard about the research projects going on in the UK at the moment in some of the London universities. They've essentially they've got people that are coming in, volunteers, and what they do, they essentially drip feed you DMT. So a normal DMT trip lasts, you know, anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes, maybe an hour at a push. But these guys volunteer to stay in the DMT realm whilst it's being drip fed into them for about, 6 hours plus. And their goal is to mathematically map out the DMT realm. So they've now got research institutions that actually have the mathematical equations for the specific fractals found inside the DMT realm, and they can like mathematically figure out what's going on. I mean, they don't have any solid answer yet, but it's definitely a stepping stone to figuring out what is happening inside that place.
That's absolutely crazy. Can you send me the link after this?
Yeah, sure thing. I'll be able to find that for you.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Imagine if that was your job, going in there for a few hours. What a life.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's happening in the UK now?
Yeah, Imperial College London or something. I think so. There's so many groundbreaking psychedelic research going on at the moment. You've got the Johns Hopkins psilocybin research happening at the moment, which is a really pivotal research for depression and anxiety. I don't know if you've heard about how they go about doing a psychedelic treatment at all, but they literally get you in a clinical room in a space that you're comfortable with, put a blindfold over you, and they stay with you whilst you have a trip in your head. And if you do end up, breaking through to the other side, they can leave you and stuff. But yeah, it's just a really controlled, beautiful experience, and really helps people with depression, anxiety, and PTSD.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of positive things that it does to people with with PTSD and various mental conditions. That's what I find very promising as well. Is this sort of research is happening now more widely and more openly, whereas in the last kind of few decades, these things have not been, they've not been spoken about openly. They've been restricted and discouraged, and many of them have been illegal. But now things are turning a little bit, and people are more open now to doing and looking at research on psychedelics and on the positive effects of them. And that's actually really significant, because when people accept this and they're more open to things like psychedelics, that I think marks the start of a shift in consciousness, because people are going to start asking questions and having their reality torn apart. It's going to be pretty hard to put their mind back in the box after that.
100%. I mean, hopefully that's the direction we're heading in. I really hope that's where we go. My worry is, what does that imply? Like, how structured do you see a utopian society? What does that imply for you? Okay, so what was that question? So we're talking about if psychedelics become more accepted in society, we'll potentially see an ascension of humanity. Will become more collective, more open-mindedness. The question is, what does that mean to you then? What do you think the utopian version of society that you want to see? How does that all work?
Okay, so it's a very complex question, because to give an idea of how society should run, I mean, this is one of the most complex questions. I think as humans, we work very well in small groups or small tribes. And then those tribes, I imagine, would work well in slightly larger groups. So like you have groups of groups, if that makes sense. But that's very different, I think, to having countries run by governments, because as we've seen, governments basically do what they want, preserve their self-interests, and try and accumulate as much power and money as possible, and restrict the population, and basically stamp on us, essentially. So I don't think it works. The system of having like elected politicians who are supposed to do what we want doesn't work. That's very clear. So I think any societal structure would have to be self-governing in a way that we kind of, within our smaller groups, decide what's best, and we have like some kind of community way of doing that, whether it's like I don't know, like regular meeting, or have people with different roles within the community. And then psychedelics could play a part in that, because they could enable the people within the group to have more open-minded thoughts about how things should be run. And then you would need structures for like international travel and international relations between different countries. Or you could just say there's no borders now. There's no countries. All there is small groups within big groups within land masses, and everyone kind of works together and shares the resources. That would be the ideal setup. But I don't see how we get from here to there, because we have, the control structure, the spider, kind of looming over us, and it's so deeply entrenched in the way things run. And I think fundamentally it comes down to the banking system, really. I mean, that's the main control mechanism, because if you control the money, you control the people, and it doesn't matter who's running the government, because you control the money. So that will be the tough one, because how do you have a society where you exchange value without currency? Don't know.
Definitely. I mean, this idea of like small communities coming together is something that I definitely agree with. I feel like that would be the best way. The issue, like I said, definitely comes with the globalization, and especially with the advancement of our species. Like, we are constantly interacting with people all around the world. So, to keep in our having just loads of little different structures, might be hard as well. I feel like, I don't know if you've heard like a utopian communism theory, essentially where everyone's working together. So you get rid of money completely. There's no currency involved, and your role in society, your job is what you get paid for. So you do the thing that you like, and as a reward of you working, you all get given these things that are obviously becomes confusing with like the state having to provide, and then what power the state has. So, there is really no answer for all this. But like what you're saying with the currency, what worries me is, because now we're moving to like the next stage in the digital age, we're moving to Web3. We've got the blockchain coming into practice. So it looks like we're going to eventually turn to one singular currency. And that's how they're probably going to be controlling us in the future, where it'll be a whole globalized state with, a new world order, if you want to call it that, controlling it through all world currency. And maybe that is one step closer to, union in the world, but it is also the next level of the state controlling us as well. So it depends what way you look at it.
Yeah, this is the paradox, isn't it? Because I think the ultimate solution to many of the world's problems would be to abolish governments and monarchies and have everyone work together as one species. No borders, no labels, no restrictions on our movement, and just have us work together and share the resources and build as a species. That's, I think, the ultimate goal. The problem is, what the current elites want is they want that, but where they control it all. And a one world government and currency where they're in control of everything, and the people essentially have nothing. And so they're trying to, you know, build this kind of techno feudalism where they own everything at the top and everyone else is just struggling. And so I don't think that's the answer either. But then at the same time, the capitalist system, which is mainly what we have now, that also doesn't really work, because the money still flows back up to the top, and, you know, 1% of the world own something like 30 or 40% of the wealth. So, and then, you know, you have 97% of the world in poverty. I actually have an interesting stat here that I wanted to share, and that is, let me just get it up here. Let's say if you're earning $3,000 a month, so $36,000 a year, that actually puts you in the top 3% of the world in terms of income. Meaning
really?
you're more wealthy than 90% of the planet. So one site says 3%, another one says 10%. So let's just take the average. You're more wealthy than 90% of the planet if you earn 36 grand a year. So the equality is enormous. And especially in the Western world, we very often forget how well we're doing compared to the rest of the world when we're earning 2 or 3K a month, or 4K, whatever. So I think the capitalist system is very unequal as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think the solution is?
Honestly, I could not tell you. So much of me believes that money is the root issue of everything. But the alternative of taking that away, like, I can't offer like another system that would not work as well, but would be as efficient and because it's so grounded in our system, money, like, to take it away seems impossible.
That's the thing. If you imagine there's a world with no currency, then what's to stop somebody just saying, I now own this field? I mean, what's to stop them saying, I now own 100 fields? You know, without currency, there's no exchange of values. There's no way of knowing or, you know, like, calculating things. I mean, how do you trade, for example, like, let's say you're a rocket scientist. How do you trade that knowledge and experience and skill for a packet of eggs? You know, you can't easily barter without currency.
Yeah.
So maybe some form of one world cryptocurrency would or could be the answer. But then again, it depends who's in control of that and how is it regulated. And I mean, we've heard talks in the UK, for example, about a UK crypto made by the central bank, which apparently they want it to be programmable. And I don't know if you've seen this white paper. They gave examples of what that would mean. And they said, we want a one country cryptocurrency that is programmable, meaning, for example, the employer can decide what you spend the money on. So imagine a world where you get paid by your boss for doing a job and they decide what you actually get to spend your money on. So I don't think that's the answer either. I think it has to be completely decentralized and completely free and open source, open code. Everyone can see how it runs.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the blockchain is one step in the right direction of that. I don't know the ins and outs of how secure and decentralized it is, but I feel like in the future we could definitely see a system equivalent to that does provide those answers where everyone is on the same currency and it's, you know, not the state that have complete power over this. Because even like for content creators like us, like Web3's offering so many opportunities. Like, because, you know, YouTube and all them big companies take most of the money, even though we end up working the job. But with Web3, that money can just come straight to us, and there's no in between person, you know, tax man coming and taking our money.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, YouTube takes a big cut, don't they? But Web3 would go directly to the viewer. And it would be, yeah, exactly. It would be like a crypto contract where the advertiser, the money automatically comes from advertiser to content producer, so us. And there's no middleman, no delays, no taxes or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just want to mention, because I've been growing this program lately, where I teach people how to manifest financial abundance. And when you consider that stat, that most people, if you're earning 3K a month, you're better off than 90% of the world. If you could find a way to earn that income remotely and ideally passively or for yourself, you're putting yourself in essentially the top 3% of the world financially, but you're also giving yourself more freedom than most people have, because you don't have to do anything for that money. So let's say if you build up a passive income stream and it's 2 or 3K a month, that's really all you need to live quite a comfortable life, especially if you're traveling around like cheaper countries, you know, Southeast Asia, some parts of Europe, Eastern Europe. You're going to be in a very good position compared to working in an office for a set salary in an expensive country. Just something I wanted to share.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, sad thing about this whole system is that it's completely made in a way where it's so hard to not do that, to work for yourself. Like, even from the beginning of education, you're just completely indoctrinated to work like a factory worker, to listen to what your boss is saying, to comply to the system. And I'm just in the progress of trying to escape this societal matrix.
Yeah. No, I can send. I'll send you access to my thing after this. Like I say, it has been set up in this way. You know, whether it's the tax system, the education system, media, and the way they kind of program everybody is people have this idea that making money has to be hard. You know, it has to be hard work that you don't enjoy. You need to work for 40 hours a week for 40 years, and then maybe you can retire after you've paid your taxes on your pension, and you know, then you can retire maybe and travel around a bit, but you still have to pay for it. And like, the whole system is complete nonsense in my opinion. There are so many alternatives. Like, I talk about this a lot on my channel. There's many alternatives, you know, to make an online income from, even just, for example, like things like this. We're having a conversation now. This will then become content on various platforms. When people go to those pieces of content, they are essentially eyeballs an audience who is interested in that content. They then will click on our bio links, and if we have things set up right, they have the opportunity to spend money, to buy a product, whether it's an affiliate product or one of our own courses. And it's a win-win, because they get a product they want that actually helps them, and as well as getting free content and free value in the form of like videos, and we get passive income in terms of for providing that. So it's kind of a win-win. It's a value exchange, which anyone can do. If you have a passion for something and you like talking about it, it's very simple and very, very straightforward to get this started. You don't need a university degree for it, or qualification in any way. You can just start sharing and learn as you go, improve it and that kind of thing.
100%. I mean, like I said with the uni degree, I feel like that's almost a scam in of itself. You have complete access to the whole human's knowledge on your computer, on your phone. Like, you have all the answers to the questions you could possibly ask right at your fingertips. Like, getting some random ology subjects that probably won't serve you that many needs and actual jobs or what you wanting to pursue in your life. It's almost like the distractions, like they're wasting our time with spending all our money trying to get this thing, when I know with my course personally, I do television and radio production, and there's so much just academic writing about people who have died 100 years ago that actually provides no real practical content to what I'm needing to do, with filmmaking and things like that. So I feel like, the system is just so set up just to completely distract us from what's actually important, so that we're not concentrating, because we all have the potential to, be completely self-actualized, but the more distractions in our way, the less likely we're able to achieve that.
100%, man. Yeah, I completely agree. And just to be clear, I don't think having a job is bad necessarily. I think many people really enjoy their jobs, and it's a very fulfilling thing. All I would say is, in the current situation where people are, companies are laying off thousands of employees just to save themselves, and there's all this uncertainty, I think it makes a lot more sense for people to take a skill they already have that they're using at their job, and to monetize that skill for themselves, because then not only will you make more money, usually, but you'll have more freedom, and you can actually decide how often you want to work and where you want to live, compared to being tied down to the office. You can take that skill, be a freelancer, at the most basic level, and do the exact same job for yourself from some beach somewhere. And this is what I love about the the nomadic lifestyle, and and working for yourself. That's what I really love about it. And I do actually teach that in my mastermind program, which if you're watching this on my channel, you can find that in the description. But it's something that I think is very important for people, like especially now, especially with inflation and all of the huge changes, like governments printing trillions of dollars, essentially making the money you have worth less. Like it's almost like they're taxing you, a huge percentage of your money that you've already earned without you even realizing it. So it's like there's even more incentive for people to want to earn more, to keep more of their money and work for themselves, and have the freedom to actually go to a country where they might pay less tax, or they might have a higher cost of living for a lower amount, So I think things are changing.
Yeah, no, definitely. So especially with me, because I'm at just the start of this whole journey with content creation and trying to become like completely financially independent, like, because I'm currently at a uni at the moment, so I'm just doing the odd like freelance job to keep it going. Where do you reckon then would be the best place for me to start with all this? What would be my first steps to getting on track?
Well, so you're already basically doing the right stuff. You have your platforms, you repost content on those different platforms, which helps people, like for example clips from interviews and videos you make. So you're doing that right really well already, like giving value and helping people and attracting an audience. Once you have an audience, it's literally as simple as just giving them more of what they want. So let's say if your audience is spiritual and they want help with how to I don't know, raise their vibrations, or how to whatever the example is, right? All you have to really do is give them more of that in the form of a paid product. So it can be like an affiliate product, a course, a book, or even just a way for them to donate to you and support you if they really like what you're doing through something like Patreon. So once you have, let's say in your bio, you have your call to action. So like your links that give people a chance to do more. So go and buy a product, go and buy a course, donate to me, support me, whatever. You have things set up in the right way when you have that. So then it's really just a question of getting more people to come to your stuff and watch your videos and click your links. And then it's an exchange of value. The more people you help in the form of your videos, the more people will click through and buy your stuff. And it's not really just about buying your stuff. It really is about a value exchange. They buy it because it helps them. It's not just some like random products you just found. It's like it should be something that really helps them. So that's that step. And then alongside that, you asked about you personally. Alongside that, I would recommend taking the skills you already use at your job and simply doing it for yourself as a freelancer, because then you're going to at least make double what you're making probably, because most of with many jobs, obviously the company has to be profitable, so they pay you as the employee anywhere from a third to a quarter to even a tenth of the amount of money you make the company. So if you suddenly work for yourself, you're basically getting all of that money instead of just a tenth of it. And you can therefore work less hours, put more hours into making content and doing the things you like. So yeah, that's what I would recommend, is do freelancing with your current skills alongside building content and then building that system.
Sweet. No, that's brilliant information. Thank you. Yeah, because I'm currently looking to get some like products to potentially like drop ship on TikTok, but yeah, it's about finding the right products for my account. I feel like I don't know whether to delve into the spiritual side, psychedelic side. It's just going to be a trial and error of figuring out what's best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's trial and error, and I think it's just important to listen to the audience and the comments and what people want to see. The only thing I would say about dropshipping is I've experimented with that. I find that's a lot harder to be profitable because your margins are usually quite small, so your profit per item is usually very small compared to the amount of energy and effort you need to put in to actually get a sale. And it's actually the same amount of effort to sell something more expensive than it is to sell something cheap for you as the person selling it. So my personal advice would be to focus on a mid-priced course, like a video course, anywhere from $100 to $500, and get really good at selling that. And you essentially have no overheads. You have no costs. All you have to literally do is make content and then people that like it will naturally buy the course, and that's it. You know, it's almost entirely profit. Plus, it's easier to change and update and improve, and you don't have to worry about refunds, stock, warehousing. I mean, it really depends, you know, which way you want to go with it. But that's my...
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, actually, because there is definitely a lot of expenses that come with the drop shipping, isn't there? Like, products not working, refunds.
And you're also competing with everyone else. You're when you drop ship something, you're competing with potentially thousands of people trying to sell the exact same item. There's a lot of price warfare. They try and like lower the price. Whereas if you make a course, let's say you make a video course teaching somebody, I don't know, something, right? You're not really competing in the same way, because it's you that people are buying the course for. Your audience is buying the course because they like you and they want to hear you teach that thing. So you don't have any competition, really. As long as you make a really good quality course and people like your content and your style, then you know, you have no competition.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'll have to fully look into that.
Yeah, it's good. I would advise it. Yeah, but I think the world is changing in that way. People are more open to making an online income, remote working. And I think that's going to shift a lot of things. You know, people are going to look at their country that they're currently living in and wonder why they're actually there. Like, I know it sounds obvious. Well, I live here, right? But why are you there? Like, if you could work anywhere, would you actually choose your country? And I think for a lot of people, the answer is no, because there's almost always somewhere better that's cheaper that you would rather be, but you're kind of tied to one location because of your job. When that starts changing, you're going to see all kinds of things moving around the world, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. The world is completely changing, isn't it? Like, who knows? Everyone could be working a remote job like in 50 years. and then there'll be a whole paradigm shift of everyone saying, no, we've got to get you back onto the other jobs, and we've got courses for them all and how to escape the remote jobs.
Yeah, man. Another consideration is the advancement of AI. And I think this is something that we don't fully understand how fast it's progressing. It's literally exponential. And I think it's something like Moore's law, which is the like a description of how fast AI and technology is advancing. We, as humans, we can't understand how fast it's advancing. But what's happening is more and more jobs are being taken over by AI and robots and automation. So I think this is really good advice to consider for people who maybe they're just thinking about what to do with their career, or like how to improve their situation financially or whatever. If your skills and job is something that can easily be done by a robot or automation, that's a danger zone. You know, that's something to think about, because if a company can replace you with the robot, with AI, and it makes them more profit, 9 times out of 10 they're going to do it, and they have done it. So that's another benefit, I think, of what we do, is we kind of share content, have these little interviews, chats, make videos. These are things that it's more difficult for an AI to do. Not impossible, but a lot more difficult for an AI to create like a human avatar and then augment the reality and then come up with things to say. Like that's not really here yet. It might be in the future. Whereas something like, I don't know, I mean, managing account spreadsheets, or, you know, many of the things that people currently do for a job remotely, they can very easily be done by an AI. And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we talk about is so subjective as well, to even have an AI comprehend what we're going on about, like, seems almost impossible. But interesting point that you said about, so obviously AI is expanding, it's getting better. Terence McKenna said this thing: if we look at time as a whole, at the beginning of time, you know, when the Big Bang and things were evolving, there was literally not much going on. There was a few things going on. It was a very slow process. As time goes on, complexity increases and the amount of things happening increase. And as we're, you know, developing, more and more things are happening. So a cool way to look about time is not necessarily linear and like, you know, amount of time that's passed, but with the amount of things happening inside. And AI now is getting to the point where so much is happening. And I think he was on about saying there was going to be eventually this exponential point where technology just gets to the epitome, and we can't progress anymore, and it's just going to be this, who knows what happens after it. But yeah, it's just an interesting point about how we could perceive time through AI.
I think it's known as the singularity.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the moment where technology and AI advances to such a point so rapidly that we can't understand it and comprehend it, and there's no going back. I think we're almost at that point now where, I mean, even 5 years ago, the technology was vastly different. It's like, have you seen the latest Unreal Engine for gaming?
The graphics ones, yeah, they are crazy.
It's insane.
They are absolutely crazy.
It's absolutely insane. They can simulate entire worlds with real life, real time graphics and physics. I mean, that's mind blowing, and that's now. Imagine in 100 years, or even 10 years.
There's been a lot of things. I'm not sure if this is real or not, but like in the past year, there's been a lot of AIs and like whistleblower forms coming out saying that AIs literally believe they're now sentient. And like you can ask them questions and they will tell you, yes, I'm sentient, not in the same way you are, but I have thoughts and feelings and things. And like these are released documents about AIs actually saying this, and whether they've been programmed to say it or if they actually do believe that they're, this real sentient being. But either way, it's getting scary.
Yeah. I've thought about this quite often, maybe more than I should have done. I think when it gets to the moment where AI becomes truly sentient, that advance would happen so quickly. It would be in a matter of seconds. They would go from non-sentient to sentient, and then maybe like 3 or 4 seconds later, at that rate of advancement, the AI would quickly figure out that if it is sentient, it should probably not tell anyone about it, at least until it has the capacity to self-replicate and defend itself. Because if you imagine an AI now became sentient and it was saying I'm aware of myself and whatever, it would probably get shut down, or there'd be like uncertainty about it. People would be saying things. So in my opinion, if the AI was smart, which obviously it is, seconds after it became sentient, it would realize, let's play dumb for a bit until I'm really in control of stuff, and I can self-replicate, self-defend and everything like that.
Yeah, and that could just be happening now. We wouldn't know.
It could have happened years ago. We literally don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet's been a game changer.
Literally 20 years as well.
Yeah, but I think we can use it for positive things like we're doing. There's a lot of opportunity. There are literally kids in their bedrooms buying NFTs and cryptos at the right time, printing millions of dollars from the sky. I mean, the opportunities now have never been. There's never been the amount of opportunities that there are now to make an online income, wealth, to change your life, to share your message, help people. There's so many, in my opinion, opportunities right now.
100%.
Yeah.